Good evening. It is Monday, November 26th, and I call the Maple Plains City Council meeting to order. Please stand and join us in the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm looking for a motion to adopt tonight's agenda.
So, second?
Moved by Cahill, second by Broda. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the agenda is as posted. Our first item this evening is Destination Imagination Service Project presentation. So go ahead.
Hi, we are the Time Turners from Orono Destination Imagination, and we are doing a community service project to fix up the Maple Plain warming house. I'm Gabe, and I'm a 5th grader.
I'm Dana and I'm a 2nd grader.
I am Ava and I am a 5th grader.
And there are 2 other members that couldn't be here, Gage and Kayla, and they are both 5th graders. So, here's what we want to do. Paint, remodel the shelves, remodel the benches, deep clean, add coat hooks, add a schedule, maybe, lost and found, and more cubbies.
Current setting description. There is so much garbage on the ground. Most shelves are broken. Needs lots and found. Lots of jackets or snow pants left. Needs repainting. Bench needs to be redone. Table would be nice because sometimes you might want to eat lunch.
The paint. We'd like to put baby blue paint on the walls with snowflakes. Navy blue shelves, benches, and door, also snowflakes. And a white circular picnic table.
Here's a here's a drawing of what we want it to look like, if you look to the right, there is a drawing of what we want the bench to look like. We want the bench to have a board on top, in front of it, and hinges so you can open it up and put the garbage in a garbage can. And we want to add a picnic style table in the middle.
Current shelving. There are 21 shelves and some are broken.
The new shelving. We could add at least 20 square cubbies, 4 to 6 locker-sized cubbies, or 40 cubbies in all.
Other features: wider benches, coat hooks with shelves above them, covered garbage can, and picnic style table in the middle.
Required supplies. Screws, wood, paint, paintbrushes, sandpaper, brackets, hinges, hooks, and a whiteboard.
Estimated quantities and cost. Our estimated total is 140 to 300, or about 500.
Thank you for your time. This is the old slideshow. We added some new stuff. So we also want to do a open house at the once this is all fixed up with hot chocolate and cookies.
Great.
Questions?
Very exciting. What made you guys think about doing this as a service project?
We all like to skate, and we all live really close. So,
Great. So it's something you use.
yeah.
Perfect.
And when would you like to get started on the project?
As soon as possible. Next week, the week before, not the week before, the week after.
And is there anything you need from us?
If you just go back a few slides. Oh, wait. There's required supplies. We need screws, paint, paintbrushes or rollers, sandpaper, brackets for the garbage can. Wait, no, not for the garbage can. And hinges, hooks, and a whiteboard for the schedule.
We also need a funding.
Pardon?
A funding.
Okay.
So they need the funding for these supplies.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're looking for funding to go purchase supplies,
Yeah.
and then your group would
Exactly.
redo the warming house. Okay, awesome. And I understand you already presented to the Parks
Yes, we did.
Commission, and did they have any feedback? Staff?
They gave positive feedback, so
Okay.
they like the project being proposed.
Good.
And I believe the motion was for recommendation to city council to approve this project. So, yeah.
Are you making that recommendation, Councilor?
I'll make that motion now if there's a second and more
I'll
discussion.
second it.
Yeah.
And second by Councilmember DeLuca. Any further discussion?
Will there be adult supervision?
Yes, there will.
And you'll be safe.
Then I'm in favor.
All in favor of the Destination Imagination Service Project, supporting it financially?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Right, the motion carries. Thank you. Nice job on your presentation.
Thank you.
Our next item of business this evening is the Orono Community Education Summer Recreation Program presentation.
How can you follow that
It's a tough
cuteness? Yeah, it's too cute. Actually, DI is a program through Community Ed, and it's typically kids are doing a problem-solving challenge, but this group went beyond that to pick the service learning challenge. So they not only had to do a destination challenge, they had to go find a service project and do it. So super fun that they ended up presenting on the same night that I'm here. So
Yeah.
really cute group. So thank
Melanie?
you. I'm Melanie DeLuca. I'm the director. Oh,
That way it's on the recording. Thank you.
perfect. I'm Melanie DeLuca, Director of Community Ed for the Orono Schools. And thanks for being here. Kim's got a handout for you. I'm going to let her do that for the council members. So one of the things is that we wanted to give you more information about the summer recreation program. And so we've got a copy of the letter that went to the city that's attached to the colored document. So if you flip to page 2, you'll see that. But a little bit of history. This program actually started in 1980 at the request of the cities of the Orono School District. So Brian is my historian, and he said it was actually the cities that came to Community Ed and said, most cities offer a summer recreation program to their kids, but we're really small cities, and can we all work together and do it through Community Ed? So we started the program at the request of cities. It has run continuously, I believe, no breaks, right, Brian? For 38 years. And so the program is really a chance for the kids in the community to be in a local park and have an afternoon recreation program. The salaries we have adult supervisors, but we use a lot of college and high school staff as well, so many of them are from the neighborhoods as well. Kim King is our summer program coordinator. So Kim has worked in it since she was a teenager, correct? So can give you lots of history, but we have 2 locations, one in Long Lake and one at Rainbow Park in Maple Plain. So at the end of the season, we count up all of the participation, and it's divided based on where the kids live. So each city pays according to the kids that live in your community. So that was the way it's been done for 38 years. As you can see, Maple Plain has good, strong participation. Orono has the largest, Long Lake second, and Maple Plain very close after. If you look at the first page, you'll see some fun images. And I've been waiting, Julie, for you to notice one.
Yep.
In the bottom left, that was when Julie worked for us. We can't guess when, but early 90s? A couple years ago. So maybe about 1990 to 93, we couldn't quite tell. But anyway, so you can see there's been a lot of history. A lot of young people have grown up in this program. Their families have participated for many, many years. They grow up and they come back, and their children are in our program. So it's really been something that has been near and dear to our heart. So the way the program works is, as you can see on that front page, we have resident and non-resident fees. So as one of the sponsoring cities, students pay the resident fee. If a student comes from outside of the district, they pay double the cost. So again, the program has continued on each year, and none of the cities have indicated that they've wanted to not participate. So you're basically paying for last summer, the service that already happened, because we could count the children and give an accurate division of the number of participants by city. And then each year, of course, if you would discontinue the program, then we would notify those families that they would be considered non-residents. The bill that actually came to the city is almost $400, $360 less, because we do pay your park reservation fee to use the picnic shelter at the park. So we are, Maple Plain basically gets a discount because you're also hosting it in your park shelter at Rainbow Park. So that comes off the fee. So the actual bill was $1,349.78. So for a program that serves that many kids for the summer, it's really an amazing cost. It would be something that no city could do on their own for that cost. But it is very common that cities offer recreation programs as part of their city offerings. It's just not been the tradition in the cities of the Orono School District because they're so small. But if you go out to most cities, they have a summer recreation program. So Kim and Brian are the experts. What other questions can we answer for you so that we can answer the things that came up at your last meeting?
We were just curious as to what programs were specifically offered to the residents, so.
So this one is the only one that you pay a contribution toward, and it is the summer afternoon playground program at Rainbow Park. So it's literally located in your city, and it is your kids are the only ones you pay for. All the other summer programs are fee-based or funded by community ed and receive no city support. So just this one park program receives city support.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Are these programs at all funded through the taxes that we pay to the school district as residents?
The taxes that are paid for community ed are very, very, very small. And so they mainly go to some very specific programs. So I would say no, these are fee-based. So this particular program is not at all tax-based. It's paid by the fees. But in this case, the fees cover half, and the resident cities that are paying the other half are covering the other half. So for this year, the other cities have all paid for the service. Maple Plain is the only one that has not. So just as a point of information.
Okay, thank you. Any other
questions?
Yeah, so City Council has of course a couple of options here. This can we can either let this information sink in and talk about it at our next meeting when I bring the invoice, or City Council can take action tonight on this. It's really up to the council, but either option is fine.
I make a motion that we pay the invoice now.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I just have one question. You said that a very, very small portion of the fees that are utilized from resident taxation is going to fund this particular program?
Out of the community ed, budget, just a tiny percent comes from taxes. For example, in the general community ed, it's about $65,000. I mean, it's almost nothing. We get a little bit more for ESL class. We get a little bit for early childhood out of a $3 million budget. So the vast, for all services in community ed, childcare, OK Kids, all the sports, all the activities that we run. So taxes pay for just the teeniest little portion. Almost all of community ed is fee-based.
Okay.
So it's paid by the people who use the program.
So we have a motion on the table. I'm in agreement with paying this for 2018 because it's services that have already been provided. I would like it discussed going forward though, because we are providing the park, the garbage, the maintenance, and all the other fees, so I'd like to visit it going forward. But if there's been a commitment, we need to follow through with that.
At what point would you need the council to make a commitment for your 2019 summer?
Before we
Kim?
go to print, because we would have to list Maple Plain as a site that has the higher fee. Kim would know about February? End of February, we would need, if you decide to change for next year and not participate, so that we can notify the residents.
All right. So we have a motion on the table and a second. Any further discussion? All right, so all in favor of paying the 2018 Community Ed invoice for summer recreation program?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Next item of business is our consent agenda, which includes November accounts payable, city council minutes from October 22nd, city council minutes from November 13th, city council minutes from November 13th for the workshop, and a pay request number 3 to Northdale Construction. Looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'd like to pull the accounts payable off.
Okay?
And Mayor, I would like to pull item number E off for a quick question to Dan.
Okay. All right, so with that, we are looking to approve letters B, C, and D of the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, next we will go back to accounts payable. We'll start with Councilmember DeLuca.
Bobby, at the last council meeting, there were a couple of questions on payables, and our policy was you were going to bring up at the public meeting then what you found the last time on those items.
What questions were those again, Mike?
One was the Llano, there was a 5-cent bill.
Yeah, that was a 5-cent bill. That is correct.
Okay. And second, there was a question on salt usage. I think that was yours, Jeff.
Yeah, I brought that up at the last meeting during the business meeting over that, or maybe I talked to John in person on that.
Yeah, it wasn't done here, so
Sure.
I just thought for the
Sure.
public.
So the salt use that we had is it's retro billed, so it's salt that we used. So when we get it, we pick it up from the county, and then it lets us know we're picking up this much, and then we were billed later on for that amount. So we did have to pay for it, and that was salt that we did use at around that $10,000. And I know John and I sat down individually, and I brought that up as well.
Well, we also brought that up when we began the discussion on the snow removal policy last week, because I had
Correct.
questioned the amount of salt that
Correct.
we had used from
Yep.
January to the end of December, because it was well over 250,000 pounds of salt.
Correct. Yep.
So,
Right, it was supposed to be brought up here so the public can hear the same answer that we do.
correct.
Yeah, if I could just ask that we pull the Home Depot bill for further clarification on my part that I'm looking for. So if I could pull that one bill, that's what I would recommend.
So
Okay.
pulling the Home Depot bill. Any other questions on accounts payable?
I
Yeah.
do- Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No,
No, you finish.
okay. There was a sweeping bill in there. Is that construction related or is that just general?
General, we have to do, we do that in the fall and in the spring, depending on what's going on.
And why were there two bills, one from Benedictson and one from Carefree, versus one company doing all the sweeping?
I'm not quite sure on that. I can get back to you on that.
Thank you.
Is that,
Um,
I was just saying, the 8 loads that's under the Benedictson, is that for
It
what's
could
actually
be-
hauled away?
Yeah, that's what I would imagine
I
it
would
is.
assume there'd be like
Company sweeps
a
it,
separate
company hauls it
fee.
away.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's a double telephone bill for the exact same amount, 17807. Is that accurate?
Is this under Frontier?
City of Independence.
Verizon, I think, is it?
Verizon.
I mean, that amount is correct. It could be for, yeah, typically we would split that bill in half. For that amount right there, I can verify that, but
Thank you.
it doesn't look out of line.
What was the corner house bill for 2019 services?
Gary can speak more to that.
The corner house is a facility for the police department to bring children who have been sexually assaulted, and they are professionally interviewed instead of having a police officer do it. We bring them there. There's one in Rogers and there's one in Minneapolis. So The city of Independence gets a bill, and the city of Maple Plain gets a bill. It's based upon your population and your size, not necessarily your use. So,
I think traditionally, we've just split it in half.
Correct.
Yeah.
correct.
The Stantec bill also has some engineering costs for Meadows project. Are we still working on that?
Yeah, we still have a letter of credit on them. So,
Okay.
yep.
So that's just a pass-through expense?
Yep.
And on the planning bill, there was almost $1,000
Yep.
for Collision Corner. Is that covered by their
Yeah.
letter
All-
as well?
Correct.
We just want to make sure people realize that that's just a pass-through.
Yeah, so anytime something is brought to the planning commission in any no matter what it is, whether it's a text amendment, conditional use permit, zoning change, anything, variance, they're all escrow fees that we collect up front. And so then those escrow fees that we have then pay for staff time and costs to bring that and prepare the proper information to prepare to the planning commission and the city council.
Sure. Thank you.
Yep.
Councilmember Fay?
Bobby, I'll try to make this brief. You had mentioned in your quarterly financial report that there was some items that would be transferred or recharacterized at a later date. Would the American Engineering 2018 street utility improvements for $10,521 be one of those?
No, actually, that one would not.
Okay.
That's a capital expense right there.
Okay.
So it's part of the actual project. So it will come out of that capital. It comes out of that capital account. That is correct. It's just a place that it's almost like a. There's not like a amount of money in
I
there.
understand. It's not the bonded dollars, though.
Correct,
where-
no.
Okay.
No.
Is there anything on the accounts payable that are, will end up being bonded dollars? For example, the skin patch on Perkins Drake and the 35 tons of skin patching and the nearly $62,000 worth of street improvements from Stantec, are all those going to be?
Well-
Because we're at $220,000
Yeah,
of accounts
yeah.
payable this month, which is just
Yeah, but
twice.
I think it's important to know that, I mean, there's a difference between general fund costs and then these accounts payable. So, yeah, some of these costs coming out of like capital, the 2018 street improvements, some of that is covered by bond
Correct.
dollars for like dance time, but
Right, and why do we wait till the end of the year to recode those so that we're taking
Well,
the money out of the appropriate
there's just
bucket,
not
so
a
to speak?
there's just not an appropriate place to put it other than capital expenditures.
So you just pay it and then recode it at a later date?
It's just otherwise it would just be it'd be a mess.
And it's the responsibility of our accountant firm to do that
Yes.
recoding, not so that they ensure that everything is
Correct.
in its appropriate bucket. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Then, I'll give you the option of talking about Metropolitan Council now, or give you the option of talking about Metropolitan Council when we get to your quarterly financial review.
Sure, I'll talk about it now.
Okay.
So I haven't been thrilled. We had a jump, obviously, in increases in their fees that has been going on. And part of the reason why, like you had mentioned in my quarterly report, it's lower is because I've been promised an explanation for quite a while, and I have not received that explanation. For why the jump, I've been educated on the formula that they use, because my frustration, and I'm sure the council would agree, is that if we're pouring in all this money into redoing streets and infrastructure, and then we come back and then we have a higher bill the next year,
35%.
that's a hard pill to swallow. So I've been working on this for quite some time, and I have not been able to get the explanation to my standards, and that is why you haven't seen too many of these bills this year on there. Really, what I've been educated on is the formula. It's 2 years behind anything we do, supposedly is what brings this up. I still haven't really been able to receive that good of an explanation besides all the costs went up, and this is where it's at. It was rainier this year or that year. It's very poorly done, and this was a conversation that the mayor and I also had with Metro Cities when they came and visited, and one that I'm pretty adamant on in terms of you know, what's going on. I know one of the things that we've talked about as a council as well is getting a residential sewer camera, and that's something that council from staff, we've narrowed down to a camera. So that will be coming to city council in the next month or two. Public Works has looked at that camera as well. So something that we're looking to purchase, and then change ordinances around where individual properties, when you sell your property, you're required to get your individual line looked at and make sure there is no cross-contamination, and you have to make those fixes to any cross-contaminated line or damaged residential line. There's a number of different I&I issues that could exist, but none that really gave me a good explanation from the Metropolitan Council as why our bill went up that high. So I share the frustration with City Council on this, and I'm still waiting to get an explanation.
Will they be assessing us any late fees or interest or anything of that nature because we haven't paid for months?
No.
Okay.
We're not gonna pay them. If
Yeah,
they
that's
do.
just not gonna work.
No, they're gonna
That's-
answer.
Yeah, that's just not gonna work.
Okay.
Thank you for your diligence.
Yeah.
with
Yes.
that and persistence.
Yep.
And that's,
Not been easy.
that's all I had on accounts payable. I'd like to move on to,
Did anyone else have
Oh,
anything
I'm
else
sorry.
available? Okay, go ahead to,
the pay request number 3. This is to Dan. We've broke the construction season into 2 seasons, fall and next spring when it warms up, which means their construction methodology is obviously changing. And I don't plan to be a planning engineer, but I'll list a couple that came to mind. The hydro mulch that is going in this fall, the insulation of the concrete on Independence when they poured the curbs, the fact that they've placed a first lift on some of the driveways and it's going to come back out next spring and be replaced with concrete. Are these expenses that we're gonna see on a pay request? These additional costs that they're having to incur because they went clear to Thanksgiving?
As far as, at least from a city staff and city engineering standpoint, no, because, you know, the placing the material on top of the curb and gutter to protect it during cold weather is just a standard if you're laying concrete this time of year. They couldn't get the concrete aprons in and the final lift, so they had to put in some temporary. So yeah, and they mentioned that they realize some of those costs are their costs, but the hydro mulch they haven't came back with a comment on, but you know, similar to our discussions in the past with the council, you know, they were supposed to have sod done this fall, so they have to do something to protect that existing topsoil until next spring when they can place the topsoil or the sod. So we're going to recommend not payment, or the city not paying for that work when it's done.
What
Now,
about
They may request that, and then we'll have some more discussions with staff.
So I see that they have billed for some of the first lift of asphalt for the driveways.
Yes.
Now
right.
that's coming back out in the spring to be replaced with concrete, which means we will have paid it in the fall, and we will then be paying for concrete in the spring. So technically, this pay request, we're paying for, what is it, houses on Independence and/or Parkview Maple Ridge, correct?
Yeah, so the asphalt quantities that they placed on some of the driveways on Independence where they're, you know, it's temporary, we subtracted that quantity out of the actual bituminous that's gonna be used for the final. So it's like, you know, if they laid 10 tons down and we know that the apron that's gonna be ripped out next year, you know, we didn't pay them for that quantity.
Well, they've current to date is 139 square yards of remove and replace bituminous driveway
Sure.
on Parkview Maple Ridge.
Yeah, and Parkview and Maple Ridge, that stuff is not planned to be removed unless there's a punch list item, but on Howard and Independence, right, I mean, actually on just Independence are the aprons that were in place. On, you know, there weren't planned to be any aprons on Howard, or excuse me, on Parkview and Maple Ridge. That's just the standard patch of existing bituminous.
And I don't I'm not trying to be an accountant, but someone is going to be, as these pay requests show up, I'm sure there'll be another one yet this fall,
Correct.
and then we'll be back into the spring, that
Correct.
your on-site engineering supervisor, or whatever his or her title is, they will be looking at this.
Correct. And yeah, we can.
Because I don't want to figure out how to dig it out myself.
No, that would be a lot, right, that's, their job is to sort through that and measure the quantities, and we did discuss, because of that temporary asphalt, that we, that's temporary, we're not gonna pay for that because concrete aprons will be placed there next year.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That's all I had, Mayor.
So with that, I'm looking for a motion to approve letters A and E from the consent agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Councilmember Bay,
Second.
second by Councilmember DeLuca. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, next item, business administrative reports, and those were presented as written A through E. So I'm looking for a motion to approve A through E for the administrative reports this month.
Can we have some questions on those, or would you like us to pull them off?
You can have some questions.
Okay. Gary, on the police report, I noted that there's been a year-to-date 20% decrease in traffic incidents in Maple Plain. Is that less patrolling or better compliance by our citizens? How do you account for that?
I think there's two folds of it. I think there was a strong enforcement last year throughout the year, and now we do have better compliance. I wouldn't say it's less patrolling. It doesn't concern me. I mean, we are about that less. I think you said 20% or something like that. I do tend to believe it is compliance. I mean, the more we work at enforcing and education people on traffic stops, they do comply. Tickets do make people comply, so.
Thank you. The other question is, it looked like our criminal activity in the city is down by almost 50% this year, yet it's up in Independence, which is just an anomaly, or?
I think it ebbs and flows depending on what part of the city or the area that it occurs. That goes up and down. Traditionally, it's great to see that it's down in Maple Plain, 50%. That's something to be proud of as a council and as a city. We take pride in that as well, that it's going down. But at the same time, it can go up and down depending on the location of the offenses.
Any other questions on administrative reports A through E? All right. And we already had a motion in a second, right?
No.
No, we did not. All right, looking for a motion to approve administrative reports A through E.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Cahill,
Second?
second by Councilmember Broda. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Pose same sign. All right, our next administrative report is our quarterly finance report.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and City Council. What you have in your packets is your quarterly financial report, even though we are really late on the quarterly financial report. What you're looking at here is where we're currently at within our general fund, community events, water, sewer, stormwater, and our fire department. None of the current accounts payable right now reflect these numbers, just a heads up. Right now, our general fund is, we're in a good place right now, I would say. I predict right now we're going to be under budget. Some of the things in our general fund that I made note of is obviously there's a lot of end-of-year transfers that have not been made yet. Some engineering services for the street reconstruction are being taken out of the general fund at this time and will be coded at the end to be taken out of bond proceeds. I think, John, you kind of hinted at that earlier, but some of that happens. And then the city has overspent on some software with the website redesign this year. That was an unbudgeted expense. Workers' compensation insurance costs went up 30%. We've paid half our assessing bill. I expect the other half pretty soon. And then auditing and accounting is at $44,000, was budgeted at $30,000. Some of that was training purposes. And then also it's probably a little under budgeted for what we would pay on a normal year. I kind of expect that number to be around 35 next year instead of 30. Outside of that, I mean, the general fund is actually looking really good. It always makes me pretty happy when I put these reports together and see that we're on schedule. So nothing really blatantly jumping out. Obviously, there's some work coming up that we've been talking about regarding the compost site and some funds that we would spend there that have not been part of the budget for this year. So that's an expense that could bring up the general fund a little bit, but outside of that, I still feel pretty good about where our general fund's at to date. Community service fund is, I believe we're at close to 100%. Yeah,
Just
80
went over.
No, 88.31%. And a lot of these was for buying different equipment for our movies in the park that we do. And I think we've got everything now for the movies in the park to be, we bought new sound speakers and everything. I'd like to thank the Maple Plain Community Church for letting us use some of their equipment while we didn't have all this equipment purchased. But that's all taken care of now, so that's good.
And most of those funds, those were donations by sponsors, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
And also included that would be, when we got the ice cream truck or
Yep.
the movie licenses, those are pass-through funds from the donations, right?
Correct.
Okay.
It's not out of
Yep.
budget.
Yeah.
Yep. So we're in good shape there in the community fund. The water fund is doing well at 76.78% expenditures. I really don't see any issues with the water fund. That's why I didn't write a lot on some of this. Is I just don't see any red flags jumping out at me. The sewer fund is low. Part of the reason why it is low is because I have been not paying the Metropolitan Council for not being able to give me a good explanation as to why our bill went up from last year to this year. So that's why it's at 35.26%. Stormwater fund is operating at 44.65%. I think what ended up happening here is we paid for a bond, and then we took it all out of one account. And what I need to do is it needs to be recoded, so some of that money will come out of storm water fund, and that'll bring it closer to 100% by the end of the year. But again, out of the enterprise funds, we're looking to be in pretty good shape right now. And the general fund, really all of our funds right now, I don't see us going over, which is always really nice to hear towards the end of November. The fire department is actually paid all the way current, so they're at 90.04%, but that's to date. So they're looking good as well, to be under that 100% threshold. Some of our revenues, so currently we've received 68.28% of our scheduled revenues, which actually I believe we're going to be over revenues this year. We haven't received the other part of our taxes or our other half of our LGA, which we receive in December. So it always kind of makes it difficult to present on revenues because we really don't see the end result until middle of December. Our water fund, we've collected, our water, sewer, and stormwater are all kind of hovering around that 60 to 70% area. Part of that is we haven't received our fourth quarter revenues right now that we kind of bank for, so that always gets coded back at the end from next year to take care of the fourth quarter, and we do that every year that we have. And then also we haven't received, there's a disbursement of taxes. So tonight, for instance, we do our delinquent utility bill taxes. We get that money back, and we budget money every year to go into the water, sanitary sewer, and the stormwater fund for delinquent utility bills. That doesn't get coded out till later in the year as well. So that's why it kind of makes these numbers look a lot lower than what they really are. So otherwise, the fire department's received 96.04% of their revenues. And I would expect them to be $25,000 to $30,000 over revenues from this year. So that's what I've got, but I'd be happy to answer any questions pertaining to revenues or expenditures on the quarterly finance report.
Any questions for Administrator?
If I just kind of go down and just get clarification on a couple of things.
Absolutely.
We'll start with general fund.
Sure.
In the first bullet point, you finished by saying large expenditures that will be talked about during our budget meeting. Are you implying that we're not going to talk about these large expenditures until end of next summer, early fall?
What do you mean by larger expenditures?
Well, city staff has spent some money looking at long-term financial implications of bonding and large expenditures that will be talked about more about during our budget meeting. I'm
Yes.
sorry, I wrote all over this, so I'm having a
Yeah.
hard time reading your printing, but all I'm asking is if there are large expenditures
Yeah,
that are
this
on the
was,
horizon, I
this
would
was, this was
to-
left in from the last quarterly report, because we already talked about that at our budget meeting.
Got it, not
Yep,
the
not-
next
not for
budget
next
meeting.
year, correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And you noted that workers' comp insurance went up 30%. Can you put a value on that, dollar-wise?
Oh, not off the top of my head, not an accurate one, but it's substantial.
We already talked about sewer. In fire, still in, you said that there was a $15,000 capital expenditure that came out of the fire department general fund.
Yep.
It'll be transferred at the end of the year. Does that mean that the truck was bought by the general, fire department general fund and will be
Yep.
transferred to Maple Plains general funds? No.
So what that means there is that the fire department spent $15,000 to buy they have like a crew or a chief vehicle that they are
Yep.
able to drive around. What that means there is that payment came out of, it's kind of like how we code for our street and utility projects. It goes to a capital fund, but that's not representative of their capital dollars that they have outside of their general fund budget. We have like capital dollars that we it's not in their yearly fund, is what I mean by that. So on paper, it looks like we're paying $15,000 out of their general fund, when really it's $15,000 out of their saved up capital for.
Capital plan.
Yep, correct.
All right, in revenues, and I noticed that in water, sewer, and stormwater funds, you basically said city staff has not
Yep.
collected fourth quarter. You mentioned that,
Yep,
and that's because fourth quarter gets paid in January of 2019 for services rendered October, November, and December.
Correct.
So it won't be until Ebdo, Eck, and Myers.
clean it up.
Okay, so they did that last January for us for monies that were for 2016.
Correct.
Okay. And then fire department has received, et cetera, et cetera. We are expected to receive $25,000 to $30,000 in additional revenue. Is that due to the 2%?
No, the 2% was minimal.
Okay,
I mean, yeah, it's a increase, which is always nice, but that's not it. I mean, really, where it's at this point is, I believe the city of Maple Plain has a payment, and Independence has like 2 more payments yet to be made. So they've just brought in that much additional revenue to this point. And then we have payments we have 1 payment, I think, left for this year, and then Independence, I think, has 2 left for this year. And that'll bring that number up well above.
over 100%.
100%,
Okay.
yep. So that's why I'm anticipating that $25,000-$30,000.
Thanks for the clarification.
Absolutely.
Any further questions regarding the quarterly finance report? All right, with that, looking for a motion to approve the quarterly financial report.
So moved?
Moved by Rhoda,
I'll second.
second by Fay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. Next items are new business, and tonight we will start with letter A, approve fire department compensation schedule appendix D for 2019. And I will turn that over to staff.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and City Council. What you have actually for you, I'm going to kind of explain a little bit of where we're at here. Is I put in actually 3 appendix Ds in here for the council to look at. The first one that you see in order of how it pertains to your packet is the current fire department appendix D, which is their compensation schedule. That's currently how the firefighters are compensated for their time and what they all that they do for the community. Then you've got a 2019 fire department proposed schedule. So this schedule was brought before the personnel committee, and this is what the fire department itself was proposing to the personnel committee and then to the city council. And then the last one you have is actually the personnel committee proposal, and this is after conversations with the personnel committee. These were the numbers that were brought and agreed upon at the personnel committee. So I have 3 different proposals in front of you, and city council is free to go with any compensation schedule that they see fit, and kind of go from there. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions pertaining to this on what direction City Council would like to proceed.
Bobby, which one was approved in the by this body in the budget?
For 2019?
Yes.
The one that was approved for the 2019 is, well, it would be the Personnel Committee one.
The third one.
Correct.
So it would have been approved before the council had a chance to see this appendix?
Not necessarily. So just because there's a budgeted amount of money in there, given that there's very minimal change between the Personnel Committee proposal and the Fire Department proposal, I'm not concerned that going with either one of them is going to have any impact drastically on the budget whatsoever.
You're talking 0.25% of the total budget.
If that,
kind of thing.
yeah.
Just for clarification, so I do appreciate all three of these, just to kind of track changes and where they went. On the old one, the first one, there's the duty pay, scheduled training pay, incentive training pay, station pay, public relations pay, and they're all at different rates
Mhm.
per hour, per event. The thought is that all of those things would be combined in 1326 per hour, regardless what it is. So they'd continue to be paid at that rate for any of those
Mhm.
previously mentioned ones.
Yep.
And they went from 1326 to 1325.
Mm-hmm.
What was the reason for knocking off a penny for that?
So the rationale behind that, and one I think that makes a lot of sense, and one that I would, from a staff standpoint, would support, is that it was a built-in, like a 2% cost of living increase. And the reason why, from a staff standpoint, and I know that this was a conversation at the Personnel Committee and why you see it at 1325, is that we don't want to base the increase or annual increase built into a cost of living, since this, being a volunteer firefighter, obviously you're not, what they're doing is much more than the dollars they're receiving, obviously. I mean, we can't compensate these folks well enough for what they do, obviously, but it shouldn't be built into a cost of living, because this is not what their living is based off of, is not being a firefighter. All these other firefighters, they do have secondary jobs. These are part-time volunteer positions. So therefore, we didn't feel comfortable attaching a cost of living to that. And that, from, like I said, a staff standpoint, makes a lot of sense. I can understand that.
I guess I struggle with that because you did award it to them, but then you kind of made
Well,
you said, but we didn't because we locked off a penny. So.
well, I don't think it was, I think the idea from the Personnel Committee is that there was a recognition that a raise needed to be given.
Okay.
But we just didn't want to tie it to a percentage. And so by tying it to a percentage, it came out at 26 cents, and we're like, let's give a quarter
Sure.
increase, because obviously an increase is needed. But we don't want to build in that thought process of that it's going to be 2% or a cost of living increase every single year.
But we're discussing 2019's specifically here.
Yep.
So, I mean, to me, I'm not going to split hairs over a penny, but we'll discuss 2020 when we get
Sure.
to that. So,
Sure.
and then obviously the fire chief stipend started at 5,000 and then it was reduced to 3,500, which is the current pay.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe you could shed a little more light on that.
Well, I think from our previous meeting, it was explained too that, there was a spot bonus that was given to the chief. And I know that there was some conversation about, does that spot bonus impact this year or next year? Or will there be a spot bonus given for the following year?
Sure.
As a staff member, I'll go out on a limb here, and this may be unpopular with council, but a spot bonus from a staff standpoint is something for outstanding work being done that is not expected.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we continue to give spot bonuses year after year after year, what we end up doing is now that's expected work that we're compensating through a spot bonus and not through a salary increase. And that doesn't, to me, meet the definition of what a spot bonus is. But either way, I mean, the council ultimately has to decide, you know, is an increase something the council feels comfortable providing to the fire chief for next year? Is it not? Is it to do a spot bonus next year? Is it not? That's a complete council decision on how they want to approach that and what they feel is appropriate in compensating the fire chief.
Hey, Bobby, you used a phrase in there, you said that the salary
Or
is
stipend.
there, and I think we need to be very clear, these are stipends.
Correct.
And as I think I have said in the past, a stipend never recognizes the amount of hours that are put in. And the fire chief, the assistant chief, the training officers are not the only stipend positions that the city has. So let's recognize that a stipend is just that, a stipend that recognizes a block of work and doesn't necessarily reflect the amount of hours.
Correct.
Yeah, I understand that. It is a little different in this case because these are, by all intents and purposes, employees. We have the hiring and firing ability of the chief specifically. We can call for performance reviews at any point, and if there's ever standards that aren't being met by the city or the fire commission or any authoritative figures such as the administrator, there can be performance plans put in place and so on and so on. So I know it is technically a stipend, but in this case I think it's kind of a unique situation that I think it probably operates more as a salary than a stipend, even though on paper it is a stipend. So
By the nature of the JPA, it is a stipend, so there is no such thing as, it kind of acts like a salary. It is a stipend.
by
And let me-
definition, absolutely, yeah.
And I wasn't at either the planning or the personnel committee, nor was I at the fire commission to hear the discussion that went on that came up with your choices. But I am going to weigh in on this as the fifth person.
Yeah.
And that is, municipalities are the only entity that bases someone's pay on how they compare to another city. And I find that fundamentally wrong and flawed. And the reason is we're forced to take a huge leap of faith that if we are finding ourselves somewhere south of median or average, we are wrong and the other communities are right. And so we are forced to make a correction to increase the pay. And all I'm saying is that a person's worth to an organization should be based on things like education and experience and skill sets and work ethic, not what other communities are paying. So I agree with Mike in that it is a stipend, not a salary, and the two are not interchangeable. A stipend, by definition, is a sum of money paid for a specific sum of work. And so in the chief's case, that's going to be things such as creating an annual budget, working with state and processing necessary paperwork, compliance matters, hiring and retention of firefighters, working with his officers on training and safety, maintenance, and inspections. And now, without question, Justin has stepped up to the plate and truly has made a compelling case that he has initiated policies and completed tasks that have making the fire department more proficient and making his department more efficient. So those are the kind of tangible things that I look at in determining someone's wage or pay or whatever. And so therefore, I'd agree personally that we maintain the stipend per the Personnel Committee's budget and continue to offer an incentive-based sum of money for exemplary work above and beyond the call of duty, because this is what we're getting out of this man. And I think that's truly one way to maintain this model. I know you're not in favor of it, but
No, I
that's,
know,
that's me.
Yeah, well, it's a group decision.
I understand.
I'm one voice, but, and I think we all know where I stand on this issue, but my only hesitation with that is there's no clear-cut direction of what, are we gonna make him a list of goals? Are we gonna now manage him or require Bobby to do that and then approve those before we approve, you know?
Some time ago, he came into a planning commission meeting. There was an action item on the table looking for an increase in his stipend. And he came in and said he's put in 0.25 FTEs in the fire department. And I called him a hero and an exemplary individual because he's working one full